The day we found Blackwood Cottage was supposed to be the start of our dream vacation, a break from the hustle and bustle of city life. My parents, my two brothers, and I had been yearning for some quality family time, and the idea of secluded cottage in the woods seemed perfect. As we drove down the winding road leading to the cottage, excitement bubbled within us. The sun was setting, casting an ethereal glow over the landscape. But as we approached the cottage, a sense of unease crept over me. Blackwood Cottage stood tall and imposing, its windows dark and foreboding. My parents seemed oblivious to the eerie atmosphere, their eyes filled with excitement at the prospect of a luxurious vacation. My brothers, on the other hand, exchanged nervous glances. Despite our reservations, we unloaded our belongings and settled into the cottage. The interior was indeed luxurious, with plush furnishings and modern amenities. My parents were thrilled with their find, but I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. That night, as I lay in bed, I heard strange noises coming from the walls. It sounded like whispers, faint and indistinct. I tried to brush it off as my imagination, but the feeling of unease lingered. The next morning, we set out to explore the woods surrounding the cottage. It was beautiful, with tall trees and a tranquil atmosphere. But as we ventured deeper, I felt a sense of dread creeping over me. That evening, as we sat down for dinner, a sudden chill filled the air. The temperature dropped drastically, and the windows rattled as if a storm was brewing. But the sky was clear, and a full moon bathed the surroundings in an eerie light. As we finished our meal, my youngest brother, Timmy, suddenly clutched his chest and gasped for air. Panic gripped us as we realized something was terribly wrong. My parents rushed to his side, but their efforts were in vain. Timmy's lifeless body slumped to the floor, his eyes staring into nothingness. We were in shock. How could this have happened? The nearest hospital was miles away, and we were in the middle of nowhere. My parents were inconsolable, and my other brother, Jake, was silent with shock. Days passed, and the atmosphere in the cottage grew heavier. Strange things began to happen. Objects moved on their own, shadows danced in the corners of our vision, and whispers filled the air. My parents tried to reassure us, but their own fear was palpable. Then, one night, as I lay in bed, I felt a cold presence in the room. I tried to scream, but no sound escaped my lips. I was paralyzed with fear as a figure materialized at the foot of my bed, a shadowy figure with glowing eyes. I don't know how long I lay there, trembling with terror. When morning came, I found myself unable to move. Panic set in as I realized I had lost feeling in my legs. My parents rushed me to the hospital, but the doctors were baffled by my condition. As days turned into weeks, the situation grew worse. My parents became increasingly paranoid, and Jake was withdrawn and sullen. The whispers grew louder, and the shadows seemed to move with a life of their own. Then, one fateful night, as we sat down for dinner, the cottage was plunged into darkness. The air was thick with an oppressive silence. Suddenly, my mother let out a blood-curdling scream. We rushed to her side, only to find her staring blankly ahead, her eyes wide with terror. And then, one by one, my family began to die. It started with my father. One morning, he announced that he was going for a walk in the woods to clear his head. Hours passed, and when he didn't return, we went out to look for him. We found him lying on the forest floor, his body twisted in an unnatural position, his eyes staring into the distance. Next was Jake. He had been acting strangely for days, muttering to himself and avoiding our gazes. One night, he vanished without a trace. We searched the woods, calling out his name, but he was nowhere to be found. His disappearance left a void in our hearts, a sense of dread that hung over us like a dark cloud. My mother was the last to go. She had been the pillar of strength for us, but the events had taken a toll on her. One night, as she sat by the window, staring out into the darkness, she suddenly screamed and collapsed to the floor. We rushed to her side, but it was too late. She was gone, leaving me alone in that accursed cottage. I was the only one left, but I was not unscathed. The cottage had taken everything from me, my family, my health, my sanity. As the days passed, the creatures that haunted the cottage became more aggressive. They no longer confined themselves to the shadows but prowled the rooms, their glowing eyes piercing the darkness. I tried to escape, but the woods seemed to stretch on endlessly, trapping me in their grasp. One night, as I lay in bed, a creature with glowing eyes emerged from the darkness. It lunged at me, its claws tearing through my flesh. I screamed in agony as it ripped into me, tearing away my eye, my fingers, and half of my leg. I fought with all my strength, but it was no use. The creature was relentless, its attacks fueled by a malevolent force. When it finally withdrew, leaving me bleeding and broken, I knew that I was truly alone. I don't know how long I've been here, or if I'm even alive. The pain is constant, a reminder of the horrors that await me in the darkness. Blackwood Cottage has claimed everything from me, leaving me to suffer in its wake.